So welcome to Sun and Fun and all of our great community members who are here. Well, you got to pat yourself on the back, don't you? Okay, today's subject, you know, with this Obamacare thing, we had a choice as we were running a business, so we had two choices to kind of cut down medical expenses. So we thought about A and B, and A was teenage pregnancies and STDs, and I didn't think that was fitting. So I chose number two, which was health and safety to do with noodling. Because it's very dangerous, and we have to cut accidents down. So that's why there's going to be a test afterwards. You have to prove your proficiency at noodling in the deep end. What? No, I'm serious. Okay, before we get started, I would like to introduce a couple special guests that we have here that most people don't know. We have Dave and Colleen. Please stand up. Dave Knapp and Colleen Edwards. You guys really need to do better than that. They're my new employer. Come on! There we go. Thank you, thank you. You want me here till the end of what, April? Okay, no, we're very fortunate because they've actually paid for our guest speaker. He told me I could say that. He's not free. So, free to you, but not free to us. I was fortunate to have dinner with our special guest last night, and I was a bit worried because, you know, dinner next year, all this health stuff. I thought, I'm got to go out, and I'm going to have to, order tofu with lemon juice? But then I read his blog, which you really should go on. He ate a 3-pound lobster with onion rings. And look at him. He's fit. So there's hope for us, because what you should get out of this was you'll be able to go out and have really big meals and still be younger next year. Isn't that fantastic? So, once again, as you know, I could stay up here all day, but I won't do that. I'll get somebody smarter than I am. But I'd like to introduce the author of the books. I read it. It's very enlightening. I used to look like Jared before he ate subs. I'm telling you, it's a good book. Anyway, all the way from Manhattan, we have Chris Crowley.
Yay! Thank you very much, Tim. I've got to thank. Thanks an awful lot. I'm going to start up here, but I may wander around. Thank you, Tim. And I'm tickled to be here for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's snowing like crazy in New York. Barely got out. Second, David and Colleen are paying me an absolute fortune. But more important in a way, I've been wandering around talking to people here, and the things that bring you here, that you talk about, I say, so why are you here, are the stuff that I'm going to talk about that I care about like crazy. You'll see in a minute. I start off these talks with a couple of numbers, but I say to people that they sound so extreme, it's easy to screen them out and just assume, well, that's baloney. We'll put that to one side. Except for one thing, they're absolutely true. These books have been around for a while, some of them, and these numbers are conservative, if anything. Here we go, first number. 70% of aging is voluntary, and you don't have to go there until the very end of life. 30% of it is on a biological timeline. You can't do much about it. Your maximum heart rate goes down, your skin gets goofy looking like mine, your hair sad, and your libido tails off. Saddest thing in the world. But 70% is significantly within our control. That's a wildly optimistic number. Big, big deal. Second number, 50% of all the serious illness and accidents that the other kids are going to have from the day they turn 30 till the day they die, you can skip altogether. Not put them off till the end, but just plain not have them. 50%. Serious illnesses like heart attacks, strokes, adult onset diabetes, cancers, and the one I always forget, Alzheimer's. Heartening news, let me tell you. Those are extraordinary changes in our prospects. There is our basic notion, Harry Lodge's, my beloved partner in the first book, The basic notion is that there's a revolution in aging going on. There really is. It's kind of slow, but it's very important. It's a big deal. And it's based on a profound revolution in our understanding of how our bodies age and don't age at the molecular, biological, evolutionary level. Interesting stuff. It's going on like crazy. I did the first book with Harry Lodge, the young next year. Then more recently, just a year ago, a nifty book with a woman named Jennifer Sachek. She's 40 and I'm not. She's a professor of nutrition at Tufts and just a raging smarty pants, cute as a button too. If you get one of these books, be sure to look at the picture on the back. There's a wonderful picture of me and Jen. Somebody said you should have called the book "How to Score Great Looking Chicks Even Though You're 80." Anyhow, there's a profound revolution in aging going on, as I say, and makes a profound difference. The quality of life in the last third of life can be radically different from what our parents knew and our mentors and maybe what a lot of us expect. Trouble is, it's quite a lot of work. Pity, too bad. I'm not going to talk much about the science. I had a wonderful time doing these things. It was like a one-on-one tutorial for 2 years with each of them. First with Harry Lodge, who's a fabulous teaching doc at Columbia in New York, and then with Jen, she has a PhD, then 4 years at Harvard Medical School, and she's a professor at Tufts, which is the leading nutrition school. She's an all-American rower, and on and on and on. Anyhow, I learned all kinds of stuff. I'm just your basic Wall Street lawyer, but I learned a bunch of stuff doing these books, and it was great fun. Not too much about the science, but let me give you a little teeny bit to orient us all. The most interesting thing that I learned from both Jen recently and Harry a while back is about the signaling system inside our bodies. Some of you may know about it. I sure didn't. We have this extraordinary signaling system inside our bodies. Billions and billions of signals all day long. Every cell is getting bombarded with them like crazy. More signals inside one body than all the internet and tweets and twitters and stuff in the world inside our bodies. Extraordinary. Very subtle messaging system. But the messages are fundamentally very simple. It's always one of two things all day long, all night through to the cells. One of two things, grow or atrophy, grow or decay. It's the basic song of life. And when you're a kid, the default signal is to grow. No matter what happens, you get cuter, stronger, more sexual, better company, more cheerful. It's good to be a kid. It's this tide of youth that sweeps you along. Goody. Then you're 32, you wake up one morning and you notice that the tide has gone slack. And the next morning, it's on your kisser because the default signal is flipped over to decay. Now, no matter what you do, you get a little slower, a little fatter, a little grumpier, more pain racked, worse company, sick, fall down and go boom. Awful. Hate to talk about it. There are 3 pictures in the book. Because, first of all, the tide of aging, the tide that wants to sweep you up on the rocks where the gulls and the crabs are waiting to eat your big fat gut and take the goo out of your nose and build a nest. The tide of aging is so remorseless, so continuous. It looks irresistible, as if there's nothing to be done about it. That's what we always thought for a long, long time. But the good news in these books and these talks is that the tide of aging is nowhere near as strong as we had always assumed. If you send some different signals over the same signaling system, you can offset that tide 70%, maybe more, for a long, long time. Remarkable thing. There are only 3 pictures in Younger next year. They're pretty grim. When I get better at this, we're going to have PowerPoint, but not this afternoon. They're graphs, and over here is healthy, and out here is dead. You start around 50, and there's a perfect parabola. Every year, from 50, you go a little slower, more pain-racked, less amusing, less sexual, God knows, grumpier, and so on, until you go to the waterfall. But if you send some different signals over that same signaling system, which we'll talk about in a second, you can square that curve. You can square the curve of aging and be about the same woman or man you were at 50 or 55 or whatever until you are 80 and beyond, and then you go over the waterfall. I apologize for the waterfall, but people are working away, getting nowhere on that. The fact is that we are all in such god-awful shape that if you do the stuff we're going to talk about in a sec, you can be functionally younger for 2, 3, 4 years. We call it Younger next year. That's really true in all the important ways. You can be functionally younger for a number of years. And then you step out onto the gently tipped plateau, as Harry calls it. I am way out on the gently tipped plateau. It's a little steeper than he said. But the difference between normal American aging, that slow, steady decline every wretched year, the difference between that and square in the corner, The new aging is just enormous. I will be 80 next time he takes a look. And my little friends, a lot of them are so buggered up, it just breaks your heart. And I'll be buggered up too someday, but not for a while. And that's just worth everything. Worth going to a lot of trouble, which, as I say, is a good thing because it is a ton of trouble. The trick is to send grow signals over that same signaling system. If I had devised this system, it would have been a little different. The master signal for growth and energy and youth and optimism and good looks, the master signal would be sitting in a semi-darkened room with a jelly jar full of bourbon watching TV. That is not the way it turned out. Tragically, the master signal for growth, youth, optimism, and having a decent life is movement. Serious movement, indeed, exercise. The great suggestion, the powerful suggestion in both of these books is that it makes a ton of sense to work out pretty hard for you 6 days a week until the day you die. Which day is your day, by the way? You just do what you want. But up until then, it makes a ton of sense to work out pretty hard 6 days a week forever. There are a good life in the third act is a three-part thing. But the flywheel, the big one, is exercise. I could talk about it a little bit. I'm going to step on this sometime soon. I just know it. There are three kinds of exercise. There are two kinds of exercise that make a lot of sense. Talk about it for a little bit. If there were a silver bullet out there, and tragically there is not, but if there were, thank you, Tim. We're sinking. If there were a silver bullet out there, it would be aerobic exercise. Aerobic exercise, getting your heart rate up, keeping it there for 45 minutes, whatever it is, running, swimming, rowing, the elliptical machine, stuff like that. Just getting your heart rate up, keeping it there for a while. That is the great silver bullet. It's an amazing thing. We are internal combustion engines. We all know that. We are endurance predators. We take in food, mix it with oxygen, take it out to the blood. Instead of having one big engine in the middle like a car, Chevrolet, we have billions and billions of little engines called mitochondria out in the muscle cells. Good for us. But it's the same basic idea. Eat stuff, mix it with oxygen, mix in the goo in the blood, out it goes. There's an explosion. Take the mess away, the exhaust. Fine. We're designed for that. We are designed to move. We are endurance predators. We're designed to trot along beside the herds on the African veldt. We weren't as fast as they were, but we had wonderful focus and we had terrific endurance. We could trot along all day long. And once one of the elephant elands or whatever gets tired, his mind would wander, we'd hit him on the head and eat him. Good idea. That was the business we were in. Tragically, most of us don't do that much anymore. But our bodies haven't gotten the message. Our bodies don't understand, which is too bad in a way because we're designed for that. And when we do move, we're able to keep on moving forever. Movement is of the essence of who we are. It really is. Thinking too, but movement is really critical. When you can't move, when you slow down and get buggered up in that particular respect, it's very different and life becomes a lot less fun. Anything you can do to keep on moving all the way out is worth a lot. It really is. And the miracle is that if you do aerobic exercise, if you do this stuff, especially 4 days a week, you can rebuild your aerobic base and get stronger almost at any stage of the proceedings. What happens is that when you do it, you get new mitochondria, new little engines out of the millions of them out of the muscles. You get miles of new capillaries. It's as if at our age you could add significant horsepower or maybe a new cylinder to your car. Extraordinary. And we all think that we're like cars and that we have a certain number of revolutions and we're going to wear down the piston walls and die. That's not how it works. It's a living organism, and when you do it, you get more. You rebuild the piston walls, you rebuild the mitochondria and so on. Extraordinary thing. Do this stuff. Your fundamental gift as a moving creature can go on virtually all the way out, and it's worth everything. Second big piece about aerobics, which is so extraordinary. This is Harry Lodge stuff. He's the brains of the outfit. The great Satan inside our bodies, the thing that kills us all dead, is inflammation. That's a quick way to talk about a very complicated subject. But inflammation is the bad thing, chronic inflammation. In the normal course, our own precious blood is somewhat inflammatory. When we're sitting around, it's making things a little bit worse. But when you do aerobic exercise, you change the chemistry of your blood. You really do. And it becomes anti-inflammatory. The secret behind that 50% number, which is such a stunning number, there's nothing vaguely like that in all of medicine. The secret behind that 50% avoidance of heart attacks and strokes and all that stuff is the anti-inflammatory behavior of blood when you do aerobic exercise. Just a miracle, really is. Big, big deal. Next thing, this isn't in the book because this happened recently. Mood is hugely important. Depression's awful sad, and we're lucky that there are antidepressant pills, which are good, but they're a little bit like the cookie in Alice in Wonderland. It's hard to get the right amount. You get too big, too small, or you get the right dose, and then you change. It gets all screwed up. Awful. Exercise, serious aerobic exercise, is the single best improver of mood you can have. Such a wonderful thing. And we're not talking about the runner's high, which is a great kick in the pants. We're talking about raising the water table of your mood in general, just being more optimistic, more energetic, more go for it. Wonderful thing. When you turn into a little old guy, such as my own self, it's very tempting to become grumpy old man, crabby old woman. There's a reason to that. People tend to get grumpy when they get older. I think it's because they hear that damn waterfall and it makes them crabby. Anything you can do to raise the water table, not a bad idea. The last one, this is extraordinary. This isn't in the book either. This is new stuff. This sounds so goofy, it's hard to say. Aerobic exercise makes you smarter. Hard to believe, absolutely true. We were all trained as kids to think that we get a certain number of marbles when we were born, and you want to get your Nobel Prize work behind you by the time you're 32, because when you're 32, you start losing your marbles, and you're not going to get that work done. You're sitting in the kitchen, you hear this rattling, it's one of your marbles going across the kitchen floor to the mouse hole. Awful damn sad. By the time you're my age, you're sitting in that same kitchen in a chair, and your wife is bending over, wiping the goo off your kisser, because you have lost your marbles. Well, that's not true. Turns out it doesn't work quite that way. Things do happen, but not that. You get new marbles all the time. They come from back here someplace. That's all I know about it. They're interesting. They're not like the old marbles. They come and they have a look around, and if you're watching daytime TV, watching that dreadful Super Bowl game, for example, and drinking bourbon out of a jelly jar, they say, "Phooey on this is no fun," and they die in 30 days. But if you're engaged, active, involved, committed in the community, so on, doing stuff, caring about stuff, they jump right in, and they're just as good as the old marbles. Here's a nice thing. They did some marvelous tests, IQ tests. They took some 25-year-olds and some 75-year-olds, gave an IQ test. If they used a stopwatch, the kids did better. But if they didn't, they scored about the same. And of course, the older people had done all this stuff 1,000 times, so their judgment was much, much better. Here's the moral. If you want a rotten answer fast, get a kid. But if you've got a few minutes, hire you and me. The idea that we might be getting smarter instead of stupider when we get to my age, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. And all you have to do to achieve these pleasant results is work out like a crazy person 6 days a week, 4 days of aerobics. I know how ridiculous that sounds. I'm going to read to you just for a sec so you know I'm not completely gaga, out of touch anyway. Harry and I wrote the first book in the wintertime when we decided 6 days had to be it. We were right about that, by the way. And I thought, oh, Lord, I was a good kid. I was going 2 days of working out, which in those days put me in the top 4% of the population, probably still would. I thought, 6 days, what will I do? I like to bike a lot. It was the dead of winter, and I'd heard about spin class, which is popular now, but you're the great spinner, I've heard you, darling. Good for you. Such a wonderful sport. Anyhow, I'd never been. I thought, well, I'll go to spin class. Here I go. So here I am at the gym. I was signed up for a year at shocking cost. I had the spin class schedule. It is 6:30 in the morning, and I am feeling very shy because I'm very old. I'm 40 pounds overweight, and I do not look becoming in my bicycle costume. The instructor, an alarmingly pretty woman with a slight zero accent, sees me looking helpless and comes over and explains about the flywheel and the tightening knob. Blah, blah, blah. The room fills with beautiful creatures in their 20s and 30s. There are one or two old numerals, but no one vaguely as old as I am. The instructor has a microphone, and she starts telling people how hard to pedal, how fast, how much resistance. My hearing has gone to hell, but I do as best I can. Speed up, slow down, tighten the resistance. Rah, rah, rah. Out of the saddle, she screams. Everyone stands up and starts pumping like lunatics. Resistance, she says. They all take a hard turn to the right of the knob. My quadriceps, which I thought were strong, start to scream. How many seconds can this go on? Actually, it goes on for about 3 minutes, but I do not. Did I mention that the walls are all mirrors here? Well, they are. And I've just caught sight of my own face, and I sit down hard because my face is purple, and I'm sweating in a way that suggests the onset of serious illness. Not good health. After that, I only do some of the stuff she says, but I hang, man. I'm there for the whole 45 minutes. Finally, it's over. Stretching exercise, blah, blah, blah. My color is still peculiar. So I totter out of the room. The instructor comes over and says, nice going. First time? How could you tell? I give her a wan smile. She just nods and says again, nice going. I stumble home, bathe, and go to bed. It is now 7:45 in the morning. My day is over. It is good that I am retired. I could not go to work like this. But here's the deal. I said at the outset, you can rebuild your aerobic base just by doing this stuff. I do this stuff all the time now, and it's extraordinary. I'm still a little old guy and whatnot. Things are getting worse, but I go to spin class all the time. Then we go to a tough one in New York, flywheel, serious. Bunch of 2/3 women. They're all in the 20s and 30s. They're young and strong and so on. And they have a way to keep score. They have a power thing to accumulate a score. I am usually about the third strongest woman. That is a miracle, let me tell you, because you can rebuild your aerobic base. I stress in these talks that this is not about becoming an athlete. When I was a kid, I was just a wretched athlete, and I still am. I was the only kid in my prep school who didn't get a letter in 4 years. Remarkable. So it's not about that, but it's about doing this stuff just changes your life. You know, we're going out to Aspen next week for a long time. We'll be skiing the double black diamonds at this. Not very well, but I never was very good. But it's such a privilege to still be in the game. I can bike 100 miles. I went and took anybody know what a VO2 max test is? Good for you. You don't go there. It's a horror. It's this awful test. It's the gold standard for aerobic fitness. You sit on a bicycle. It takes an hour. You pump like your brains out. They put a thing to collect the oxygen to see what your exhaust looks like. Take blood every 30 seconds. Intensely unpleasant experience. Plus a horrendous workout. It's finally over. I get off the thing, take the mask off. So how do I do? You say, you're all right. You're in the top 10% for men aged 40 to 49. Well. That tells you three things. One, I'm a hell of a guy. Two, everybody else is a disgusting mess. And three, you can rebuild your aerobic base just by doing it. It's such an important notion. If you walk out of the room and don't take away anything, remember this stuff about aerobic exercise. Such a big deal. There's a question about how hard to go. The fact is that you get most of the medical benefit from this by just going at a reasonable clip for that 45 minutes, for that hour, or whatever it is. That means 60% of your max, if you understand those words. It means that you're breathing kind of hard, but you can still talk. You're sweating, but you're not. There's no blood in the sweat yet. So for the health benefits, just do that, and you get almost all of them. If you want to do more, I urge you to do so, and Colleen will tell you a teeny bit more about this than I can, but if you are willing to go not for health, but for health and fitness, then you want to break up your 4 days of aerobics. 2 are long and slow, as I said, but interspersed are 2 days when you kind of go for it pretty hard. That means doing intervals. You go as hard as you can, you warm up. You go semi-hard for 3 minutes, then you go like a crazy person for 3, back down, and so on. So you build over time until you're going 90% of your max, 95% of your max. When you do that, you go from health, which is worth everything, to fitness and health, which is worth even more. It's great as a way to lose weight. It's even better for that mood stuff. Fitness is a great idea. But look, I've been to the gym here, and there are a bunch of fine human beings, but we're not all ready for fitness. If you just do that 60%, if you go out and spend that time, put in the time on the stationary bike. You can't just garden. You can't just walk slowly. You got to go for it a little bit. You got to be huffing and puffing a little bit, so you have to be sweating some. But do that 4 days a week. Great idea. Change your life, and it'll keep you out of the trash heap for a long, long time. If all you had to do to have a good life was a touch of aerobics, that wouldn't be so bad, but it's quite a lot worse than that. It also makes a ton of sense, in the same front, it makes a ton of sense to do strength training. We're talking bodybuilding, the worst. But it's interesting. People either like strength training or they like aerobics. They seldom like both, but you got to do both. Right? It makes sense that you can do what you want. But it makes a ton of sense to do both because they do very different things. Aerobics is the flywheel of the good life. Aerobics is the silver bullet. But strength training probably has more to do with the quality of your life than anything else. A couple of things. Run through my little list. First of all, it makes you stronger. Duh. But that's so much more important than any of us realize. How many people in this room know what sarcopenia is? Let's have your hands on that. Not a hand went up. This is so interesting. Everybody in this room has a bad case of sarcopenia. It matters like crazy, and it's going to put you in a terrible shape sometime soon unless you do exactly what I say. Sarcopenia is the disposition to lose muscle mass at the rate of 5 to 10% a decade after 32. Sarcopenia is wild, Chris. In the new book, in the blue book with Jen, there are 3 pictures, and they're MRI pictures of 3 thighs. The first one is a young woman, 20 years old, a runner and whatnot, and it shows a little layer of fat, subcutaneous fat, everybody's got that, then a big layer of muscle, then the bone. The next picture is the terrifying one. It's a perfectly regular 68-year-old woman, I forget, but like that. And there's nothing wrong with it, she's just been a little bit inactive. Her leg, a third of the muscle has turned to fat. There's a big wall of fat on the outside. And the muscle looks like the worst steak anybody ever put beside you in your whole life. It's all larded with fat everywhere. And because of all that, that poor woman cannot get out of a deep chair. She can't get out of the bathtub. There are special bathtubs these days, as some of you know, with gates in them, cost around 20 grand. But they're worth it if you want to get cleaned up, because most people, there's a lot of people that age who can't get out of the tub. Tragic thing. And it just happens. You don't have to be an idiot or a bad person or a drug addict. It's the normal thing to lose huge amounts of muscle mass all over, but especially in your legs. But here's the deal. If you do strength training, you can offset that muscle loss almost completely. It is astonishing. You don't want to go to the gym. Too bad. Do it anyhow. There's a third picture in the book, and I'm proud that you'll not be surprised, even at this early stage. There's a picture of my leg I have almost no sarcopenia at all, because I go on the leg press machine and bicycle like a crazy person and so on. There's some, but almost none. The beauty of it is you don't have to have muscle loss. Just think about muscle loss. Think about being weaker everywhere like that, like losing a third of your muscle mass. That is a horror. Your life's not going to be any fun if that happens, and it doesn't have to if you do strength training. Second one, in much the same way that you lose muscle mass, you lose bone mass. What do you call it? Oh, I forget the word. That's the one. Anyhow, and it's just terrifying. Your bones are getting lacier silently inside. And then you fall down. It's very easy to break your thigh. The classic older woman's injury, as a lot of you know, is fall down, break your hip. It happens all the time. A 67-year-old woman who falls down and breaks her hip, here are some numbers that are no fun. There's a 50% chance that she'll never walk unaided again. It's the cane, the walker, and the chair. And a 20% chance that she will be dead within a year from falling down and breaking her hip. Think about that. She's more likely to fall because of the rotten muscles, and she's more likely to break her hip because her bones have gone to hell. The miracle is that strength training can offset and prevent bone loss. And nothing else works. You can take calcium and vitamin D, do it by all means, doesn't do much good, but it's worth doing. But the only thing that really truly works is strength training. It's amazing, and it does work. It builds new bone. So worth it. Older women tell me, hey, listen, I don't want to go to the gym and wear a lycra. I look like an idiot. Listen, I say to them, you're not going there to get laid. You're going there to save your life. Please. So true. True. Third thing, signaling system again. I talked about the honor roll signaling thing, but the signaling does all kinds of stuff. Think about it. I mean, the riot of signals inside our bodies is just extraordinary. Just to stand here like this, it is to be able to balance the way we all can, just to stand here like this, there are a billion signals going on all the time, little teeny weeny muscle adjustments to keep you from falling over sideways. Just take a ladder and stand it up here, bang, it's going to fall down. You cannot balance it. We can balance ourselves, but there's an extremely complicated bunch of signals going on just to stand still. Then, scratch your nose, whew, cascades of new signals, amazing. Now, come out to Aspen with me next week and start going around those moles, going around those flags. It is a wide riot of signals, cascades and cascades of signals, extraordinary, wonderfully complicated and subtle, offsetting movements and stuff. But here's the deal. Everything you don't use rots. Everything you don't use rots. And when the signaling system rots, you are in such bad trouble. Your balance goes, your proprioception, that's your sense of where you are, and your coordination, it all just goes. Here's the thing again, though. The miracle is that it doesn't have to an extraordinary extent. Strength training refreshes, renews, brings back those neural pathways, and keeps an awful lot, not all your balance. You're not going to play third base for the Yankees again. Those days are over. But an awful lot of it. If you do strength training right, there's a bunch of stuff in the new book. I hope you all get the blue one because you get some wonderful stuff at the end about doing strength training right. Do that stuff and you revive the neural pathways, restore your balance. As I say, you're not going to be perfect. It'll be a lot different. I try to think of ways to say this. Billy Fabricini, the brilliant Aspen PT who taught me about all this stuff, he's a great natural healer and a wonderful guy. Anyway, trying to get it in my head and it was going slowly. He said, Chris, it's like this. We all live in glass boxes. And the size of your glass box is dependent on how much range of motion you have, what flexibility you have in your joints, and so on. It's a question of how high up you can go, how high down, how high forward, how far back. Big deal. Most people, as they get older, that glass box shrinks. It just plain does. And it gets smaller and smaller. Think about it all of a sudden as not a glass box, but a saran wrap box. All you have to do to keep it close to its old size is think of yourself pushing against the saran wrap. You can push the sides of the box back out. Do the kinds of exercises that we recommend in this book, and you can keep that glass box pretty good size. And it makes such a difference. There's a nice story in the book about, in the new one, about my next door neighbor. Wonderful woman, great, elegant, grande dame from Chicago. She was in her 80s, deep in her 80s a couple of years ago. She broke her hip, poor dear. Wonderful person, great company, funny. She's on the sidewalk in front of the house. She walked right by us and didn't say a word because she got one of these canes with the 4 little rubber tips, you know. She's walking along. Just break your heart. She didn't see us and she was terrified because if she goes down again, she's never getting up. Her glass box had shrunk way down. It was about the size of a coffin, one of those old wooden jobs. She was not long for this world. The saddest thing I ever saw. Be sure somebody to ask me at the end of the talk what happened to her. Interesting story. Not what you think. Anyhow, here's the last one. Still on strength training. Pain is one of the great dividers between the rest of the pack and the old people in the pack. Pain makes you a different person. Pain distracts you enormously. Pain's no fun, that's obvious. But what's interesting, it takes up all your attention. It doesn't take much pain to have you think about it all the time. And it takes just a little bit to have you not only not be able to play third base anymore, but just to be obsessed with it, not be able you're no longer part of the herd. You're just a different creature over there someplace. And it doesn't take much. I talk about it coming down in the morning. I had it in my early 60s. I was starting, all my joints hurt a little tiny bit. I'd come down in the morning and I'd reach up for the cereal and my shoulders would make more noise than the cereal when you put the milk on it. And I hurt. I would look for the cutout on the sidewalk, the little 3, because I didn't want to step up 3 inches. Pathetic. Little old guys don't walk like this because they want to look like idiots. They walk like this because every step hurts a little bit. Pain is an awful thing. Here's the deal. The only offset that I know, apart from popping pills, which is fine, but strength training is a great antidote to pain. You reduce the risk of arthritis. You offset existing arthritis. People tell me, I couldn't do strength training because I've got arthritis. If you've got it, it makes sense to do far, far more. It's the great enemy of pain. It makes an enormous difference. Big. I pulled a muscle the other day in my chest. And it hurt a little bit to move everywhere. I thought, wow, grumpy, hugely focused. There's nothing that makes you more self-centered and boring than having a little pain. You go to a cocktail, you sit to some guy, pain. Oh, excuse me a second, I gotta get a drink. I'll be right back. He's not gonna be right back. He's never coming back. Nobody wants to talk to you about your pain. It's not gonna happen. Anyhow, strength training it's weird, but it is such a good idea. By the way, I can only begin to talk about this. I was talking to Tim, trying to say that he really ought to have some kind of general instruction here. We don't know how to do strength training, most of us. Strength training in this country grew out of bodybuilding, the wonderful Nautilus machines and all that. And they're terrific because they're kind of fun to use, but it's not a very good idea. Bodybuilders wanted to isolate movement. They wanted to big build guns and have this enormous muscles, all that stuff. And if that's what you want, fine. I look stupid, but the horrible thing is that it's not good for you. It doesn't make you move right. Movement is whole body stuff. It is an integrated thing. Everything you do is whole body stuff, and especially it's core stuff. When you do strength training, you want to do it on a whole body basis, probably not using machines that is good for your core. I said that I was happy to have strong legs. Congratulations. I have my very own leg press machine, the big enormous machine that you sit down and you push the thing. I can do 400 pounds on it, which is a miracle for a little old guy like me. However, it was stupid. It turns out that when you do, the machines are more fun because they do so much of the work. All the balancing that you'd otherwise have to do, they do. You only have to go or you're on the thing, boom. Congratulations. But that's, what you really need is, my hips, all of a sudden, I was doing these exercises, I was in good shape, bike a lot, yada, yada. All of a sudden, I was in terrible pain. What happened was, I was doing the machine, the big muscles were fine, but the little muscles that hold your joints together, the gluteus medius and the psoas and some other little troublemakers, those guys were dying in there. And sure enough, it was one fine day I woke up and had this terrible hip problem and had to have an operation. It was 3 years of recovery, still not perfect, yada, yada, yada. If I had been doing whole body movement, the difference between the leg press machine and doing, I hate to be doing this up in front of everybody, but and doing lunges and squats, this is much harder unless it's much harder to show off doing this because you have to balance yourself. Try it, it's very difficult. And then doing lunges across the room, much better for you. Do whole body stuff that involves your whole body. Do stuff that engages your core. Think about this. When you hit a golf ball, almost all the strength is coming up out of your legs in the first instance. It has to go through your core and up here. If you want to you may have a great swing, strengthen your core. Rowing, if you see the guy with his arms and hands and knees, that's not where it's coming from. 70% of rowing is coming from your legs. It has to go through your core. If your core is not strong, it's going to leak away. Anyhow, do strength training. It does all these miraculous things, but do it right. I've got to just say this is useless because it won't stick, but at, I say our age, I'm probably the oldest person in the room, but as you get a teeny bit older, you can see the glacial effects of bad posture. Posture is the most boring topic that I try to address, but it's so important. We are looking at geologic pressures. Our body is wonderfully flexible. You can do anything for a week or a month or a couple of years. Do it for 30 years, not so fast. Things are going to happen. If you walk around like this with your head thrust forward, if you bow your back can carry extraordinary loads if you keep the vertebrae stacked properly. That means having a neutral spine, more or less like this. Head, hips, so on. Especially the back. Keep it stacked right, and you can carry great loads forever. But if you have it bent so that all the pressure is on the edge of the vertebrae, those darned old discs go squirting out, bone on bone. 80% of the people in this country have back pain bad enough to go to a doctor. And it's all stinky posture. Just read the darned old book. And straighten up. Do it now. Anyhow, I could go on for quite a long, boring time about exercise, but that's enough of that. But exercise really is the flywheel of the good life. Aerobic exercise and strength, they do different things. Do both 6 days a week till the day you die. And then you'll have that day to look forward to because you can do what you want that day. Big, big deal. But it's not the only thing. I'm going to go kind of fast on, yowie, how I wish I had more time. I'm going to go kind of fast on food, but the way we eat is just a disgrace in this country. We eat 20% more than we did 30 years ago. We're 20% fatter. Congratulations. Who cares? Well, we care like crazy. Being fatter, apart from not being as cute as we once were, there were a bunch of factors that work on that one, but apart from not being cute, being overweight, carrying extra stored fat is a big, big deal. This is going to offend some of you, but it can't be helped. We used to think that fat was an inert substance. It's not. Stored fat, especially the fat around your gut, is a huge source of inflammation. It is the biggest source of inflammation. Inflammation is the biggest source of disease. There's a war going on inside your body between inflammation and anti-inflammation. Here's another phenomenon that's a little bit weird. Brand new stuff. This is new science that only people like Jen know. Your muscles, lean muscle mass, send out anti-inflammatory signals. The fat sends out inflammatory signals. A war inside your body, the muscle versus the fat, the kind of crap you eat versus the kind of crap you should eat. It makes a ton of sense if you can manage it to lose some of that weight around your middle because it can kill you dead, it really can. But here's the next piece of that same stuff though, on that front. Some people just can't do it. I'm not so marvelous at it myself. You are still wildly, wildly better off if you exercise a lot, even if you're somewhat fat. Your health and your fitness and your optimism and all that stuff can be hugely improved. Not 100%, you're still running some awful risks. It makes sense to lose that fat, but the key is still exercise. Being a Vogue model, smoking stuff, doing coke, and being skinny, but not being fit is much worse than carrying a few extra pounds and being in great shape. Being in great shape, exercise is the great key. Just a couple of things. Here's the bottom line. It makes great sense if you can possibly bear it to develop a new relationship with vegetables. We eat far too much slop. 50% of the stuff we eat has no nutrients in it. The prepared foods in the middle of the grocery store is basically not so great for us. In fact, it's horrible for us. In fact, it's killing us. Here's this number. going to go on to something better soon, but 35% of the total national diet, 35% of all the calories that we take in as a people come from sugar and solid fats that are injected into prepared foods. Think about that. We're talking hamburger buns, ketchup, everything. The little rascals at General Mills and whatnot, for whom I used to happily work a long time ago, they're pumping this crap into our food and it's killing us. It's a price they're willing to have us pay to get rich. So we have to move independently. We have to move away from that stuff. Go to the veg and the fruit. Make half your plate veg and fruit, some lean stuff, some decent meat, and some whole grains. Another big one. I love refined wheat and bread and stuff. I can eat it all day long. Turns out that for various reasons, refined wheat, refined rice, refined sugar is awful bad for you. If you can give that up too, congratulations. Anyhow, take a look. Change the way you eat. Big, big deal. We don't have time to talk about all that. This is the third part of the book that you ought to know about. This is interesting, this one in particular. We have three brains. The bottom one is the reptilian brain, sits down here and regulates all motion. Three brains are stacked up. You can take them apart in an operation. Not while you're alive, but later. The reptilian brain sits down here in darkness and it regulates all motion. Hell of a brain. Lets you breathe, you go off the high board, ski, up, up, up. Then along come mammals 200 million years ago, and all they had was the limbic or mammalian brain. Sits right on top of the physical brain, and it only regulates emotion, lets people receive and convey emotions. And it made a huge difference in the Darwinian crucible of survival. These little furry creatures did terribly well because they could spend more time, they cared more about their young, and they could work together to form herds and packs and law firms. A miracle. Then along come men and women, and they have these big 3-pounders up top that let them write concerts and constitutions and so on and so forth. The true miracle. That's the one that we're the only ones who got that beauty. We tend to think that we are basically rational creatures, that it's too bad if we're more emotional. That may or may not be true, probably not, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't work that way. All of the three brains are so tightly wound together that every single thing you do has a profound limbic or emotional mark on everything. We're primarily emotional creatures. Give you an idea. We can hold 40 conscious thoughts loosely in our head. Talk about multitasking. 40. But we receive 1 million signals all the time. All of those are going right straight to your limbic brain and the physical brain. We are profound. A couple of examples. I'm tearing along now because we're out of time. A guy has a heart attack and goes home to an empty house. He's 4 times as likely as a guy who goes home to a family to have a second heart attack and die. Terrifying. Guy who goes home to a dog is 50% better off. Amazing stuff. There's I have 150 of these stories. I'm going to only tell you just 24. There's a room, not as big as this, but a big room. The walls are all lined with rabbit cages. And they're pumping the rabbits full of crap to kill them, and for our sake, not for the rabbits. But the rabbits aren't dying in the right order. The ones down low are living too long. So finally they come in and walk around. There's a little old woman, a little short woman, and she's feeding the rabbit. She likes rabbits, so she doesn't just feed them. She opens the cages, picks them up, gives them a pat, puts them back, feeds them. They figure, well, that can't be it. So they take the rabbits up high, put them down low. She pats them, and they live longer. The moral of the story is, if you've got somebody who wants to give you a pat once in a while, you let her do it. And if she's short, bend over. Here's the thing. In this country, we are very proud of our individualism, and rightly so. But don't lose track of the fact that we are fundamentally more limbic, more emotional creatures than anything. We are designed to work together in herds and packs and law firms. Okay, never mind the law firms, but we're designed to work together. And when we get isolated, we do it at our peril. I said at the beginning, I liked talking to this group. When I go around here and ask people what they like about it, the first thing they said is community. Second thing, by the way, was the fitness center, which many of them had actually been to. But that community stuff, I tell you, these communities, I was a little skeptical about this. We live in a wonderful big house in the country, enormous and so on and so forth. But we were rattling around in there alone much of the time. These 500 square foot trailers, everybody's in everybody's pockets all the time. There's a wonderful sense of community and involvement and so on. I tell you, it's worth everything. I can't stress that enough. I talk all the time to groups of CEOs, and it's exactly the same thing. CEOs are like captains of ships, they're lonely guys, and so on and so forth. But there are organizations that are made up entirely of other CEOs, and they can let their hair down with them, tell them everything, be regular guys, admit that they're terrified of this and that. Being involved, having people that you can talk to. Years ago, a friend of mine came tearing into the house in a rage and slammed the door and went right to the refrigerator. He said, "We need more refrigerator friends, goddammit." Slammed the door. Whoa. Turns out that one of his close friends had just died. He said, we need more people who are such close friends with that they just walk in the house and open the refrigerator. He's right about that. One of the things that you have to consciously work at, I suggest, and men more than women, the connection, commitment, and caring. Caring is enormously important. If it's stuff that you care about, community stuff especially, such a good idea. This place, this joint, and I'm never coming back, so I'm just licking your ears, not for I'm not doing this for future profit. I'm doing it because it's true. This place is a miraculous place for a couple of reasons. One, you're deeply committed to activity, not as much as I'd like, but a lot. And second, it's an intensely communal bunch. People are very much in touch with one another in a very positive way. That's lucky. Here, I told you to remind me about the old girl with the four-footed cane. Remember her? She was truly dying. She'd had an awful break, and then she had had several operations, and she had weeks to live. Some guy, some old lover, some old admirer comes to the door. Little short guy. She was around 5'11". He says, eyes all sunken, looked like hell, hair. She says, excuse me a moment. She goes in, throws the four-footed cane under the bed, washes her face, puts on her makeup, comes out. This is a woman who's been charming men since she was 8 years old. Yes. Anyhow, long story short, they strike up. They had this these are next-door neighbors. They live this far away from us in this building. This is 8 years ago. They're now both in their 90s. They fall in love. She recovers completely from this fatal fall within 3 weeks. Just a miracle. And she didn't touch. She wasn't eating kale, man. She wasn't lifting weights. She just had this guy show up. Big deal. I tell people, hey, listen, we're mammals. Snuggle up. I should stress that people, you'll notice that the early books, there are two early books, Young Next Year, which is basically aimed at men, and Young Next Year for women. People say, how come you wrote that? And that's easy. We wrote it for the money. There are a lot of women out there. But it was interesting. I went and asked, first of all, I went and just changed him to her and read that, and that was stupid. So I went and spent 6 weeks with a bunch of women in their 50s and 60s. We were doing bicycle trips, and I learned a bunch of stuff. Women and men age about the same way, but their attitude is very different. Women are better at aging. People say that men look better when they're older. Not when they're dead, by the way, which is 4 years before the women. The fact is that women are much better at aging. They're much more flexible. Men get a little scared. A guy in his late 50s, early 60s started to think, I'm going to have to take off the robes of office. Not so clear who's under there. Women, this is not everybody, but very wide. Apt to have the surge of optimism and interest, a little touch of selfishness. They're in the boat there with old Fred. They're thinking, I've been taking care of this boat and old Fred and the kids for all this time. Now it's something for me. How about my turn? The kids are gone. Fred can still feed himself. Now it's my turn. And as I said, they're doing stuff. A lot of very interesting things happen. One sad thing that happens is that there are a tremendous number of divorces amongst people in their 60s, and 2/3 are initiated by women. I don't know what that's about, but my guess is that they take a look at Fred. They're feeling all of a sudden a surge. He's scared, and they think, he wasn't that amazing 30 years ago. For the last 10, he's been dripping testosterone like crazy. And now he's home for lunch. He said, honey, I'm just going to tip you out for a while. You go swim for a while. I'll be back. But she's not coming back. She's going to let him swim away. We presume to give advice in this area, too. We give advice all over the place. If it's impossible, if Fred is just ridiculous, let him swim away, fine. But if it's possible to retrain him and keep him, it's not a bad idea. Even a good third act will have some little bumpy places. You're going to get a bad case of heart disease, or you're going to fall down and go boom. This stuff happens. And it's easier if you've got somebody to do it with, couples, good friend, damn fine dog, somebody to do it with, especially a spouse, not a bad idea. So if you can hang out with Fred for a little while longer, fine. If not, splash him. Anyhow, I'm going to read to you one more time just because I like this last part. I am fascinated by third acts. The idea of third acts have become enormously important in this country because we live so darn much longer. All of a sudden, we're living well into our 80s. The end of World War II, 65 was your expectation. Now it's into your 80s. Congratulations. But all our old notions of how to behave are outmoded because of that. In the old days, it was easy. You get old and die. Fine. And you retire and die. You retire, you play 4 rounds of golf, and you die. It was perfect. But now you get retired, play 4 rounds of golf, and my God, am I bored. People think that retirement's going to be like a vacation or a sabbatical. Because it's going to go on for decades, and you got to have something to do. The great risk, especially for men, sadly, the great risk is that you get isolated. When you're working, you're in that limbic stew, you're connected with everybody, you may hate them, you may love them, but you're involved. You're living a mammalian life. Congratulations. Men especially, women too, but especially men, you can get isolated at the end. The great thing is to keep on going, to recommit, get re-involved, and be yourself all the way out. And read to you for 1 second. There's a famous quote from Scott Fitzgerald, the Tender is the Night guy, the great Gatsby guy. He said, there are no second acts in American life, which was true for him. He died at 42, alcoholic, poor guy, lost, doomed. But I say to people, hey, listen, he was a great writer, but I wouldn't listen to him. I would listen to, of all people, Ulysses S. Grant, the great general and former president. Very interesting guy. I'll try to be quick about this. Grant went to West Point in the Mexican War in the 40s, 1840s. He was a terrific guy, young kid, but he had a good reputation. He was a wonderful military fellow. But after the war, he drifted and he drank a teeny bit too much, quite a lot. And he eventually left the Army, and when he married it well, he went to Illinois and worked for his in-laws at a grocery store. But nothing went right. There's a famous scene. Oh, I lost my way here. On it. In one of his books, one of Fitzgerald's books, he has the heroine say about her husband who's lost someplace off practicing medicine in some godforsaken town upstate New York. He says, oh, he's not lost. He's just waiting, like Grant, waiting in Galena. Nobody in this room probably knows that expression, but when Fitzgerald wrote the book in 1934, everybody knew about Grant waiting in Galena. What happened was that Grant is in Galena, and he's in such rotten shape, he's in his old army coat, and he's selling firewood on the sidewalk. A future general, Longstreet, comes along and sees him, Grant, whoa, scary. Civil War breaks out. They barely hire him, but he gets a job and eventually, but he's just a great natural soldier, great decision maker, wonderful decision maker, makes up his mind. Bang, bang, he has 2 of the first victories in the Civil War. He goes on to Vicksburg. Long story short, he wins the Civil War, becomes president, fine identity. Then, we all get reverses in life, especially Grant, poor bugger. He had some guy that took him in, a financial guy, and he was the Madoff of the day, and he ruined Grant. Grant was on the edge of bankruptcy. He was desperate because he was sick, he adored his wife. No dough, no retirement plan, nothing. He started writing stories, didn't have enough time. Mark Twain comes to him and said, hey, General Grant, this is not going to work. You don't have time enough to write stories. You got to write your memoir, and furthermore, I'll publish it, and I'll give you half instead of the usual 10%, blah, blah, blah. Make a long story short, he goes ahead and does it. Here's the way it goes. It was a huge success. Huge success. It turns out he is a great natural writer. He wasn't a writer, but he's a great natural writer. He wrote the best military memoir by a military leader since Caesar's Gallic Commentaries. Here we go. Just a quick read. This is almost done. It's not Grant's success that I at least admire so much. It is the fact that he just kept going always. Did new stuff without regard to his age or the string of careers behind him. There are photos of him in his final days with a goofy little woolen cap on his head. He does not look great, but here's the thing. He's sitting there a few days from death, working over the proofs, still at it all the way. That was his gift as a soldier, by the way. When others were shocked by losses and broke up engagements, Grant just kept on going pretty hard too. There's a wonderful story about him after the Battle of the Wilderness, shortly after he took command of the Eastern armies, the often defeated Army of the Potomac. The Union Army had taken a terrible pounding, and the veterans assumed that they would retreat, as they had so many times before over the same ground. And the next morning, as they were packing up and getting ready, there came Grant with a few officers, quietly riding south. The soldiers could not believe their eyes and broke into spontaneous cheers. It was the turning point of the war. Ulysses S. Grant, my friends. Think about him sometime when things get rough in the third act, as they are bound to do. Get back on your horse if you possibly can. Ride south. Ride south. Thanks. John, should we turn the lights up? We'll have some questions if anybody's got them. Oh, you darling girl. Thank you. Should we turn the lights up in the hall, John? Anyhow, if you have any questions, I'd be tickled to take them. Don't be shy. Yes, ma'am.
I heard recently there were studies that showed
He's deaf, so you have to use it.
You people in the back, come in here and sit down.
NPR is my resource for many things. And there was
Is that thing working?
Yeah.
There was a program on NPR about health. And there was a statement that there's discoveries that if you eat only 500 calories to
The question is, what about this? I'm going to jump ahead to save time for the crowd. If you eat all these strict intake limitation things, you only eat 500 calories, will you live forever? Yeah, but it's not going to be worth it. In general, it does. It does look as if it's going to be happening, but you and I aren't going to go there.
Just 2 days a week.
We're not doing that either. Yes, miss. There's a woman in the front row who broke her nose in a bar fight last night. Go ahead.
Chris, what about alcohol?
What about alcohol? This woman sensibly asked. Thank you so much. This is my favorite question. Harry and I, in the first book, only had one fight. It's because I wanted to put in some stuff about alcohol, which I loved. And Harry said, if you mention it, it's just, I don't want it in the book. But I got my way, so as I often do. And there's a chapter in the book called The Drink. As the Irish say, that it was the drink that took in the poor dear man. The thing is that alcohol is absolutely terrific for you in modest quantities. Alcohol, an ounce or two a day, every day, is the best thing, one of the best things you can do for heart attacks and strokes and a bunch of other stuff. It is terrific. The tragedy is that the sweet spot is somewhat small, as you might know. 1 or 2 glasses of wine a night, hunky-dory. 3, not so good. 17, very bad. Very bad. And what the 17 do, and maybe the 3, is they make little tiny holes in your brain pan, and they never grow over. You just get stupider and stupider and stupider. The other tragedy, and it's maybe important to some of the people in this room, the sweet spot's getting smaller. The margin of error as we get older is smaller, and it takes less booze to make us more stupid. I'm saying last night that by and large I don't drink anything the day before these talks just because I find that there's a little bit of slippage the next day, just a little bit quicker and so on. So, if you can keep your intake within a drink or 2 a night, congratulations. Best thing in the world. If you can't, blow your brains out.
When he started that, I thought the bar sales were going to go up until he finished it.
What is your feeling on caffeine?
Caffeine doesn't seem to be, the best news that I get is that caffeine's okay. You don't want to eat like a guy in the Navy in the old days, but it's all right. 2 or 3 cups in the morning, hunky-dory. Not a problem. Salt's not bad either, by the way. We've all been told since 1972 that salt was killing us. We have a huge capacity for salt. I spent a lot of time with a very smart guy. Salt, especially the salt you put on your food, as opposed to the salt that the bad guys put in our food. Don't worry about it.
Hello.
Hi.
And I'm really enjoying this.
Me too.
I've been a diabetic for 20 years, and 2 months ago I decided to go on no sugar, no carbs, exercising 2 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And the last
Do you
2
feel it?
months, the last 2 months of reading is perfectly normal after 20 years.
Here's a woman who's been a diabetic forever, 20 years. Fundamentally changed her diet and made a huge difference. By the way, there's some interesting books, we were talking about these last night too, called The China Study and Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. If you have serious heart disease already, if somebody's talking about putting a stent in you, go read the China Study or Esselstyn Prevent and Reverse Heart. In that case, you might want to go on an all plant-based diet. I couldn't do it, unless I at gunpoint. But if you have heart disease, it's not a bad idea. Similarly, if you've got diabetes is deadly serious. And here's a fascinating fact: 37% of us are pre-diabetic, and the only reason we're pre-diabetic is because we eat mountains of garbage all day long. It's the fast food, it's the white stuff, it's the refined wheat, the refined sugar, the white rice, all that slop is creating the predisposition to have diabetes. And diabetes is extremely serious. It gives you heart attacks and strokes. Your circulation goes to people that start cutting your legs off. You go blind. Not so much fun. And very expensive for the nation, so stop it. But she did say one thing I've got to comment on. She said, I don't eat any carbs. People get confused about carbs. Forgive me, but that's not true. Even you don't do that. Carbs are only 3 categories: protein, fat, and carbs. And carbs are all the vegetables and so on. You're not going to stop eating carbs. That'd be nuts. What you'll want to do is stop eating the rotten carbs. The rotten carbs are the white ones, the refined wheat, the refined sugar, and so on. But don't be confused. Almost everything you eat turns into sugar, which is what the glue is that goes to your mitochondria to start the fires and whatnot. Eat the right kind of carbs forever. Sir?
What do you think about pesticides and GMOs?
Yeah, I'm no good on this question. The question is, what about pesticides and organic foods and so on? Here's my basic take on that. I am sympathetic, although there are offsetting things. How do you offset carbon footprint, which all of a sudden this stuff is wonderfully, it's by, what do you call it? but it comes from China, and it costs, it's got 50 gallons of gasoline to bring here. In general, the problem in this country is that we eat so much rotten stuff. If you could just shift over to eating 50% veg and fruit by volume, that's the place to focus your attention. Once you get that in hand and start eating whole grains instead of white rice and French fries, then start to worry about the other thing. But it's a question of priorities. First, go nuts on veg. Second, quit eating refined foods, and then we'll talk.
Chris, what about sex?
What about sex, I'm asked? The front row.
Broken nose really
The
has a
front.
question.
By the way, this bar fight the other night was about sex. Wonderful question. What about sex? Well, good news and bad news. Good news first. Might as well get it out of the way. All those pills that we get bombarded with every night, the Viagra and the other one, blah, 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 blah. All they do is increase the circulation down to the naughty bits. It's all about circulation, which is fine. And that is good for us because what we talk about is basically aerobic exercise, which is absolutely marvelous for your circulation everywhere, including the naughty bits. So that part's good. The bad part is that the other piece of sex is libido and interest in the subject. Sadly, that's on the 30%. That's on the biological side. And that tails off no matter what the hell you do. Except for the fact that it's all sort of emotional. So and if you happen to get quite a lot cuter because you lose all this disgusting weight and get in shape, you'll feel a little bit more game to take your duds off in the night because you won't look so disgusting. So in general, it's good for sex. There you go.
Right. The shy gentleman here, he wanted to know what the top 3 supplements would be.
There are no top supplements. Stop taking supplements. I'm begging you. Stop it at once. Don't take one of the day vitamins. Don't take supplements. And for Christ's heaven's sakes, don't take protein stuff. No. Here's the deal. The only way, getting nutrients make a huge difference. Food, there are 20-odd nutrients which you need desperately. You can't make them, you have to eat them. Every molecule in your body needs a nutrient to work right. Every single one. Tragically, in this country, 50% of our food is what we call dead food. It has no nutrients. That's the refined sugar and flour and all that kind of stuff. But it works when you eat it. It doesn't work when you isolate it and put it in pills. It's not worth it. It's an $80 billion industry, whatever it is. Take that dough and buy yourself a decent bicycle. I'm begging you. All it gives you in the end, there are exceptions. If you've got a serious condition and some doc says you need more vitamin, fine, if there's a thing. But in general, all you're getting is more expensive urine. Save that money. Anything else, kids?
Are you familiar with the Les Mills body pump program? And if so,
Body pump? Oh, Les Mills. I'm crazy about Les Mills. I've met him and I know, all these things, that's a thing. A body pump is a combined weight strength training aerobic thing. And it's wonderful. I wish they have it here. I wish that they could teach here. The reason, by the way, is the fear of litigation, which is just such a tragedy. You can fall down and go boom and you sue everybody, but so nobody can learn stuff. It makes so much sense. Get Les Mills in here. It combines serious strength training with aerobics. Anything you can do to do serious strength training is such a good idea. The best thing to do is to get our book and read that stuff at the end, then buy the DVDs. We get some wonderful DVDs showing you how to do all this stuff. But doing strength training right, and I haven't seen Les Mills since I wrote the book, so I don't know how good he is, but my bet is that he's pretty good. Tim, do you think we're done?
I got a question.
Yes, yeah.
How many hours of sleep at night should we get?
Oh, if you can get 7 or 8, congratulations. I mean, it's a wonderful idea. Alas, I can't tell you how. I don't do such a great job. The things that I hear is it makes sense to have a fully darkened room, spend more time in bed, don't drink. That'll be the day. I'm not paying that price. That's like I'd rather eat kale than that. But yeah, it makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
So bottom line is 2 or 3 glasses of wine, lots of sex, and mediocre sleep.
Thank you an awful lot. That was great fun. Thank you.
So if anybody has a book, Chris would be glad to sign it for you. So please,
Isn't that fun?
you'll find
Isn't
him
that
up front here.
Did you like the spin
The
glass
cookies
story?
did have
That's a
kale
true
in it,
story.
okay?
True story. Hi.
Sabine Wilbur.
Nice
That was
to see
great.
you.
Thanks very
Good.
much. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve. Isn't that fun?
That was great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
You bet. Hi. I'm going to go over there and sign books if you're interested.
Yeah.
Okie doke. Let me get in here. Okie dokie. Those are mine. They can't have those.
Okay.
All right. Hi. Huh? Oh, yeah.